the best thing that we saw in tonight's preseason game was Danielle Hunter. And it was the first play of the game where he gets immediately in Justin Fields' face, forces a check down. Not the best tackling by the Texans today. Not the best, specifically from some of their linebackers. And without Kamari Lassiter out there, some issues. But first play of the game, Danielle Hunter just runs around the left tackle for the Steelers, gets in Justin Fields' face, forces a check down. And then on the second drive of the game, he gets a sack to force an ultimate Steelers punt. Right from the get-go, he is worth the deal that the Houston Texans gave him. 2 years, $49 million total, 48 of it guaranteed. He had 16 and a half sacks last year. He was doing what he did tonight without Will Anderson on the other side. And one of the things that's been really interesting with Danielle Hunter has been hearing him talk about the Houston Texans defensive system. So for those who don't know, when he joined in his introductory press conference, he talked about how he was told, not in his introductory press conference, but I think his first availability with media after practices had started, he talked about how this scheme is the first time where he's in a scheme and he doesn't have to think at all. He's just going in and, I guess, mindlessly going. On Wednesday, he was asked about this because it's called Don't Think, Just Go. And he said this, quote, "It's been amazing so far, just playing fast, don't have to think about anything, just playing my position. Ultimately, defensive end, you're not supposed to think about too much, but just playing fast. I think they've simplified it here, and I've done a really good job of just applying that on the field." Now, for what it's worth, I heard Jonathan Grenard, former Texans defensive end, on the Greenlight podcast with Chris Long not too long ago, and he also said that now that he's gone, ironically, to the Vikings, where is Danielle Hunter came to the Texans from, Grenard said that he feels the same way, like it's more simple for him in Minnesota, and maybe that's just something that's being said because these guys are in a new place. They want to feel as comfortable as they can, as confident as they can, and if you're confident in yourself and you're one of these athletes, of course you think, yeah, this new place, so much different, so much easier. And if you've actually proven yourself as well, you're going to be given a little bit more free reign as a pass rusher. Take a look at J.J. Watt. Now, Wade Phillips, when he was defensive coordinator for the Texans, took over in 2011. He basically, after a couple of weeks of the year, told J.J. Watt, just do whatever. And as the season wore along, Watt got better and better, and then you saw the last 2 games of his rookie year where he has the pick 6 against the Bengals and he has 3 sacks against the Ravens, the divisional round. And then the next year, of course, he has that incredible 2012, and that's how he goes on to become the best Houston Texan ever, at least to this point. But Danielle Hunter comes in right away, having an impact. Very excited about that, to see him in the new Texans uniforms, creating the kind of havoc that he did. But he was not the only Houston Texan who performed tonight on the defensive line. Mario Edwards and Foley Fatukasi, I thought, were great tonight. Drive 1, the 2 had a stuff. Drive 4 on that goal line stand that the Texans had, Fatukasi blew up the offensive lineman on second down, and on third down, Mario Edwards stuffed things, and then on fourth down, Kyle Allen, who used to be the Texans quarterback, threw a fucking terrible pass into the corner of the end zone. I don't know who he was looking for. He had his guy wide open in the corner. I don't know why he threw it as far away as he did. He didn't need to lob it out of the back of the end zone. So the Texans got lucky on that goal line stand. And honestly, we might be talking about a Texans loss, if not for that terrible throw by Kyle Allen. But before that, the Texans defensive lineman, Mario Edwards, Foley Fatukasi, I thought they did a fantastic job there to set things up. Danielle Hunter actually was asked about those defensive linemen earlier this week. He said those guys are definitely great. We want to be the engine of the defense. sack. And I feel those guys have a pretty good impact. That's something that we need from the snap of the ball. It's either one or the other, so that's something we really need at the defense. They've been doing a good job so far. And I think a lot of us, including myself, looked at the defensive line for the Texans, specifically the defensive tackles, and you thought to yourself, man, why didn't they add anybody this offseason? Because you take a look at the names that they brought in, no one really jumps off the screen. They're bringing back guys that they already had, Khalil Davis, Kurt Heinisch. But the guys that they did bring in are Mario Edwards, who's typically been a defensive end, but is a really big guy. He's had a great training camp. And Foley Fatukasi, they brought away from the Jacksonville Jaguars. And again, it's one preseason game. I'm not 100% sure of who on the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line is trustworthy. And it does take a while, I think, for offensive lines to gel going into a season. But the defensive tackle position for the Texans played really well tonight. And if you want to feel good about it, not just because of a preseason game, well, take it from the Texans defensive coordinator, Matt Burke, who had this to say at a press conference this week about the two and what they've been doing out there on the field.
I really like kind of where they're at, and they're working through Foley. I was with him in New York that year, so he does have a little bit of history in the system. Obviously a bigger body. I mean, really strong hands. So like if he can get off and gets his hands on a lineman, like it's hard to move him. So a different kind of maybe style than we had last year. And yeah, I mean, Mario's been a revelation. I think he's just been super explosive. He's probably adapted or taken to the techniques probably better than anyone in the short time that we've had. So sometimes it takes a while for guys to go from, especially a 9-year vet or whatever he is, from a read or different types or like different alignments to really like consistently buy in like to an attack technique that we ask him to play. He's probably adapted better than anyone in such a short time. So explosive athlete, yeah. I joke with him like, man, if you were in this front for your whole career, I mean, it's hard to knock a 10-year career. So I'm not saying he hasn't a great one, but it's fun to see him sort of come to growth in this for sure.
I mean, that's a rave review from a defensive coordinator, and again, we're talking practice, we're talking a preseason game. We're not 100% sure of the offensive line that they're lined up against, but I really liked what I saw from the Texans defensive line today. And I'm not even done because we haven't even talked about the other guys that did well tonight. Two guys who have been here for more than a cup of coffee. Derek Barnett, who came over from the Philadelphia Eagles in the middle of last year, and I thought was a great contributor down the stretch, especially considering for whatever reason the Philadelphia Eagles and all their great pass rushers couldn't figure out how to use him. But he comes here and I thought, had an impact down the stretch. So Barnett has been rejoined by Jerry Hughes. I wasn't sure if Jerry Hughes was going to be back with the Texans, seeing as I think he's 35, 36 years old. But Barnett and Hughes tonight looked really good. And it was the second drive where Jerry Hughes nearly chased Justin Fields down from behind. That's tough to do. I mean, Hughes is 35. Fields is one of the faster quarterbacks in the league. And on the third drive, Hughes and Barnett had a pressure, a sack, and a stuff. Think about it from this perspective. I like to look at a really good pass rush as having waves, and they can throw wave after wave after wave after wave after an offensive line. And the importance of having that is that each wave is theoretically fresh. And if you have multiple pass rushers that can rotate in and out over the course of a game, these guys are going to be as fresh as you possibly can at the end of the game when everybody's really tired and worn out. And to have the volume of pass rushers that the Houston Texans have right now in a game where tonight we didn't even see Will Anderson, who's bulked up and per Danielle Hunter is looking incredible. A little bit of trope, of course, when you're talking about teammates during the offseason, but they have a lot of defensive ends, and it seems like they actually have some good rotational pieces on the defensive tackle side of things. So the biggest takeaway that I have from tonight's preseason game where the Texans took down the Steelers is that the Texans defensive line is a lot better than I think we all thought it might be going into the year. And of course, we knew the pass rush, it had lots of guys because it had Danielle Hunter and because it has the reigning defensive rookie of the year in Will Anderson. But I think what you're seeing from the defensive tackles, and in addition to that, just the fact that they have guys like Derek Barnett and Jerry Hughes who can come off the bench a couple of times to give Hunter or Anderson a blow and also be competent while doing it. You're not taking a huge step back with those guys out there. Hughes has been a really good defender for a while, and Barnett clearly looking good with the Texans. You got to be really thrilled about that. I know I am, for sure.